Okay, so important. For next week, we've got a quiz. Let me pull up the study guide for this so that you're all aware, so we're on the same page. It says test there, it should say quiz. I'll change that. So there's really only those things that we're going to be quizzing on. We're not going to do supply and demand on this quiz. No supply and demand for this one. We will have a separate quiz on supply and demand though. So this one is going to cover basically the stuff we did in the first part of the course. I'm calling it a quiz because just like I promised at the beginning of class, I'm making the point totals for quizzes and tests be lower than I usually would in a more standard semester. So a greater proportion of your grades is going to be based on your homework assignments and things than will be based on quizzes and tests. So that's why I'm calling this a quiz and making it smaller than a midterm. We're actually coming up close on midterm. So this is about the timing of a midterm, but it's smaller and not worth as many points. Does that make sense? Nevertheless, it's worth it the same as several homework assignments. So you're going to want to do a good job on it. So make sure that you're studying and ready for next week. If you didn't master production possibility frontiers, I know some people struggle with those a little bit on the homework. Make sure you do that. You can go back to Econ Lowdown to practice those, and there's a bunch of practice online, and you can also always call me or email me. So, let's do one. Actually, let's jump straight into the notes about other people's money. Okay. Why is the principal agent problem called other people's money problem? This is from the podcast. Why is it called other people's money problem? Yeah, it's Whitney back there, right? So here's a problem that I have. I thought I had everybody's names memorized perfectly, and then it turned out that you just all had your names right there on the sheet. So, and I usually memorize everybody's names when I pass out papers. So between the masks, the lack of passing out papers, and the Zoom practice, I'm having to scramble and find everybody's names. I'm sorry, Paulina. Go ahead. Where's Paulina? Oh, so we know two people out there. Paulina. Go on.
That like if like we're writing the podcast, it's like
in that case, it's the teachers are making the buying decisions that the students are paying the cost. Are there any other instances of a time where you can think of in life that one person makes the choice for somebody else's spend? Yes.
would it be like tuition? Would it like college tuition or something?
No, not so much, because assuming that you're making the choice about what you pay, you've got to both be making the choice about what the service is or what the product is and whether or how much you pay. So I think those would be a normal one if that benefits fully. Yeah.
The podcast talks about like construction on a house with the private parts. Or like
Yes.
when you take your frame, you can decisions about.
Yeah, you all probably have more experience with the car mechanic part than the home contractor part. Has anybody here taken their car to the shop before to get fixed? It's an aggravating experience, isn't it? Because they're like, oh, well, you've got this and this and this, and you're like, really, all those things? No, but you don't know. You have no idea. So yeah, with your house, it's even worse. Like you have the contractors, they always are like, well, this one, and sometimes they tell you things at cross purposes, you're totally ignorant, you just have to trust them. And of course, that's why people try to fix that principal agent problem by getting good recommendations for a shop and by visiting the same auto repair place over and over, so you can develop a relationship with those people, and that decreases that principal agent problem. Yeah, that's a really big serious problem. So anytime that one person is making the choice, another person is paying advice. You know what's amazing about that podcast is that Greg Mantu textbook was the one that we used in this class. And the very first semester I taught this, I said, we're doing used textbooks instead of new ones. And so I assigned one from 2 editions before, and I was so proud of myself. But the students still complained that it was too much money for the price, even though it was $30. So I've done away with the textbooks now, and we don't have any of that. So I'm finding the power by not assigning you all the textbooks. You're welcome. But I thought, did you think that was amazing in the podcast? So they actually corner not just any textbook author, but it's like the economics textbook author who writes about the principal agent problem in the textbook. And they're like, does your book cost too much? It costs what, like, what was it, $200? And what was his response to that? Don't remember that? He was like, oh no, it's a really good quality textbook. When I heard that, I was like, boo, boo. Anyway, textbooks cost too much money, you all. If you thought that textbooks were too much money and they were a ripoff, you were right. Your agent problem, it's not a normal market. It's an imperfect market, and it kind of screws you over. It's true. So I've tried to do my little part by not assigning you an expensive textbook. So we're going to do a little bit of brainstorming next class period after you've looked at the healthcare market to talk about just ways that we can alleviate this problem. Okay, so get ready to take some notes, all right? Oh, I need to open them up. Asymmetric means somebody has more information than the other person does. So when the auto mechanic says, you need a new water pump, he has the information, you don't have the information, he's got more power in that exchange. You're operating with way less info than he is. And so he's spending your money. Okay, so let's do this. Let's not do the, I have those rearranged. So we start with the idea of a market failure. A market failure in general is when that market doesn't efficiently allocate goods and services. Remember when we did the iPencil video? That was showing you that the invisible hand of the market through the decisions of millions and millions of people weaves together all the productive resources in such a way that our goals are met. And it does this through markets. That is, supply and demand work together to make the price sends a signal, people respond to the signal, and in that way we capture billions of people's knowledge, and that's able to create efficient conditions. That's what a market is. So a market failure is when that doesn't happen. So let's look at some market failures. One kind of market failure are externalities. And that's when the costs and benefits of one person's decision are felt by someone who didn't make the decision. So let's do a demonstration of how this can work. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. you represent the head of a small family fishing business. You're not a big company. And you make a living catching fish, okay? I was working with teachers on this before, so that's why it says Steven says document. When Steven says go, you're going to catch a fish by using the mouse to click and drag. So it's going to look like this. I'm going to say, ready, set, go, and you're going to say, ooh, that's my box. I'm going to move the fish over there, okay? So, so whoever is this right here, Magdalene, you get to be that box in the top left. Fern, you get to be that box in the top right. Logan, you get to be the yellow box in the bottom right. And Imani, you get to be whatever color that is in the bottom left. What color is that? Teal, okay. All right, so your job is to get as many fish as you can. All right, that's pretty easy, but hold on, there's a catch. This fish population is endangered. And these fish in round one are baby fish. So when I say go, if you fish one of the baby fish, the fish is gone, it can't reproduce and depopulate the fish. However, if I say go and you wait 10 seconds, the baby fish grows up to be big fish. And then they're worth double and you don't depopulate the ocean. Okay? That makes sense, right? So I will give you a piece of candy. We have Nerds, Laffy Taffy, Gobstoppers, and Sweet Tarts right here. I should have asked if you were candy lovers first. But you all, humor me. You all are fifth graders, and this is your chance to win candy and eat it in class in front of your peers. Okay? How much value does this candy have for you? Ton. So this is a high value thing for you. Little fifth grader. Okay, and you want to be the winner. So, do you all three understand the rules? Okay, can I see each of you wiggle a fish so we know that you're in the right place? Okay, so hands off the fish, move the, let me say, yeah, laissez-faire your fish. Ready, set, go! Yes, the fish are moving. Somebody's winning. Yes, we've got winners. Okay. Who's going to be the winner of the game? 7. Somebody wins your ocean. 7, 8, 9, 10, and stop. Logan's such a cheater. She's just like, full oyster is mine. Okay. There's one baby fish left. Growing up to adulthood. Guess what, y'all? It takes 2. There's no fish left. The fish goes in. Hold on a second. I forgot to actually ask you before the simulation. I mean, are you all okay with environmental degradation and fish and animal population destruction? Apparently you are, because that's what you just did. I do this activity so many times, and people are always like, no, I like the animals and I like the environment. Boom! This happens. This is what we call here a particular kind of a market failure. Now, it's a market failure for 2 reasons. One is that it's just not sustainable, right? Fish are about extinct, and so not only are the fish gone, which is bad in its own right, but the fishing industry is destroyed because it won't repopulate itself. But a third reason, they didn't even make as much money as they did. How could they have made more money? Oh, I don't think if they would have waited the 10 seconds till the fish became big fish, like it said right there in the rules, the adult fish are worth double. So they didn't even make as much money as they could. Nevertheless, they do get their ill-gotten gains. Let's see, who's the bottom left there? That's Imani. Here. I will try to touch on this. Here's your 3. Logan, how many do you have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you had a cringe of confidence, didn't you? And then you were like, forget it all, I gotta feed my kids. Is there a way we could do it better? While we're doing this, can you all put those fish back while I do this? Because I'm gonna use this file for next time. Okay. Is there a way we could do it better? By the way, this particular market failure you just saw is called the tragedy of the commons. And you know what's kind of neat about economic reasoning is that I wasn't even able, I don't even know you and your motivations. Like, we kind of know each other, but we're kind of strangers. I was able to predict how you were going to act just by putting you in a situation where you had some circumstances. Kind of neat, isn't it? I was able to put up here, we're about to experience the tragedy of the commons just by the incentives that you all face. I was able to predict that. It's pretty amazing. Let's change the rules, okay? We're going to make this small change. I'm going to put a boundary in the middle. Now, everybody has their own quadrant. Up here, top left, that's magazines. Top right, that's birds. Bottom right is Logan's. Bottom left is mine, okay? You're not allowed to fish in other people's quadrants. If you do, you're fined 2 fish. There's no incentive to cheat on this. Your incentive is I'm giving a regulation and a rule that you have to fish in your quadrant. Aside from that, the rules of the game are the same. We're going to run it back. 10 seconds, the fish grow up to be big fish, and then it's double, and they repopulate. But you can choose to wait for 10 seconds, let them grow up, or you can get them right away, like you did last time. It's your choice. Okay? Understand? Or you all on that? Make sure you go to that slide 4 or 5. And after 10 seconds, then the fish grow up and you can harvest them. 10 seconds after that, they die and the game's over. So there's no reason to wait 20 seconds. So you can fish in the first 10 seconds and fish the baby fish. Fish in the next from 11 to 20, you get the big fish. And the game's over after 20 seconds. Okay? Everybody there on slide 5? If you want to be ready, you got to keep the other people on your marks. Get set. Go. 8, 9, 10. Okay, now, pause. Go. Okay. 1, 2 baby fish, 3 baby fish, 3 baby fish. Okay, the rest are grown fish. Ready, set, go. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay. I kind of sparked the stampede when I said go the second time, didn't I? You're a pretty impressionable bunch with this game. Okay, so look, even though you didn't still fish some baby fish, you did leave some grown-up fish, didn't you? So the fish depopulation problem wasn't nearly as bad. So we have a better environmental outcome here. And did it come at the cost of profits to them? Did they do better or worse for profits? Right, because you got big fish and little fish, right? Now you can make more big fish. It's tough for me to count these right here. We have 3 baby fish and 1 big fish. So we need to see that we'll do 5. Okay. You don't need that many times there with your Anybody who wants to say something? Oh, it's coronavirus. Okay, everybody. Well, they reformed themselves, they were both more successful, and they were morally upstanding in the second round. So give them all the I could have had you all boo them after the first round. Okay, so without going through these too deeply, in the fish game, we see that resources are scarce because not only do you need fish to fulfill your wants, but also other people are trying to get them too, which means that the scarcity of the fish is determined partly by your choices and the choices of other people as well. So we see that scarcity is a big problem here for your decision making. We see that people respond predictably to incentives because when you have to race against other people to get the fish, you're likely to act less responsibly, but when you're able to lord over your own property, you're able to cultivate it better. So the tragedy of the commons is this. It is when public or common land gets used up first. I'll say it again. The tragedy of the commons is when public land gets used up first. And it comes actually from New England in the 1600s when the settlers, they thought that they should hold all their grazing land in common. And actually, in England, they had a tradition of having common land in the middle of the community. And anybody could graze their land on the common land. But the thing is, people said, oh man, I'm going to go graze my animals on the good common land before I go try to fish out more difficult land out in the woods for my animals to graze. And everybody else said, oh my gosh, I better graze my animals there before everybody else destroys it. And so they sent all their flocks onto the commons and they got used up really fast. And it's a tragedy of the commons because they started out with the idea that we were all in this together. The land was common, it's for everybody, and boom, that's the land that gets used the worst. That's why it's called the tragedy of the commons. And actually, the New Englanders, they fixed the problem the same way that we just did, is they drew their land up into private lots and they said, you get to graze your animals there. And people said, well, I'm going to cultivate this and make sure it lasts. Partly because they wanted their land to be successful, but also because they didn't have to compete against anybody directly in their own property. And we definitely see that a small change in the rules or the system affected people's incentives. In this part, you see the importance of government protecting private property in markets. Government doesn't protect, if government doesn't recognize people's rights over property, if it's just a sort of like up for grabs, then it doesn't get used well. What are some things that tend to be polluted or trashed? Rivers, who owns the river? Lakes, oceans, air. These are all things that you can easily just pollute and it doesn't come back on you. You make the choice to get the benefit, but you don't feel the cost. The cafeteria at lunch in a high school. Was there any more polluted commons ever than the cafeteria at lunch in a high school? You know, I used to be a high school teacher, and I'd stand there and I'd let the students go use the restroom and make sure that they didn't get in fights and stuff. But man, after they were gone for lunch, the cafeteria was a disaster. Tragedy of the commons to the max there. Same principle. And I would stand next to the door of the cafeteria and shout, tragedy of the commons to the students, but they never seemed to understand what I was saying right there. I didn't do that. But it illustrates the point. Okay. Let's go back to our notes. Okay. So you've seen market failure, you've seen externalities, and tragedy of the commons is a kind of an externality. And you can see, right? Because in that game, when you choose to fish, you impose a cost on other people. An externality is a spillover, when your choices spill over on somebody else. The main kind of externality that looms large in the public mind is pollution. Pollution is when you make a choice and it spills over onto another person. Literally, actually, it spills. It's a liquid. Pollution is not the only kind of externality. Let's say that let's say on a fall day, it's Saturday morning, and you wake up, and you get some coffee, and you say, I know what I want to do. I want to watch college football because it's the fall. We all go to a school where there's no football team, isn't there? So you all probably aren't doing football. Some of you like watching Virginia Tech, right? Got some no's and some yeses. So let's say that some of you like to watch college football, and you roll off the couch and you say, oh, I'm going to watch Tech. And then, to your horror, you discover that it's the fall and the leaves have fallen on the ground, and you need to get rid of them. And your mom or your dad says, blow the leaves off the lawn. So you get your leaf blower, and you blow the leaves off the lawn, and where do they go? Onto your neighbor's lawn. It's an externality. It's a spillover. You spill the leaves. I mean, your lawn looks nice. What does their lawn look like? The answer is their lawn looks nice because they're blowing leaves also. Everybody in the dang neighborhood is blowing leaves on everybody else's lawn. And by the time they're done blowing leaves, everybody flops under the couch, exhausted. You've missed the football game, and your lawn looks exactly like it did before because you blew the leaves off and other people blew the leaves off. Was it rational to still blow leaves? Yes, it was, because if you didn't, you would have had a double, triple coverage. So you see that it's just, again, it's a system of incentives that doesn't work at all. And it illustrates the problem of spillovers, externalities. You know, externalities can be good. There can be positive spillovers. The education that you're getting is often considered a positive externality because it's going to make you a better informed citizen. And that's when you're going to be you're going to be a more informed voter. You're going to be more conscious of your community. You're going to be able to train the people around you, for the students, and that's going to spill over in a positive way. So externalities can be good. Sometimes the same externality can be both. I don't know, have you ever been driving your car and you're at a stoplight and somebody pulls up next to you and they're playing a song and you're like, oh, this is my jam. And you're happy because you hear the song. You're like, I wish I was listening to that song. And then they drive off and you're like, go, go. The funny thing is that same externality that's a positive spillover for you can be negative for somebody else because they pull over and start watching music and it's like, oh, I wish I hate this thing. Turn it off. Yeah, those are spillovers. Government failure. The reason why we include this is actually through the 20th century, they knew a lot about market failures. And they said, we got to fix market failure with government. We got to fix market failure with government. And then somebody pointed out, like in the 1970s, well, who says government knows how to allocate funds efficiently? The way that they used to model government in the 1950s and 60s was like, government is omnipotent and omnipresent, and it sees the way things should be and it fixes them. But what people did in the 1970s, they came and said, let's look how government actually operates. Legislatures tend to trade for votes. They don't do things just because it's good. They do things because they're trading their vote to somebody else a lot of ways. Bureaucrats tend to fight for a bigger budget, even if they don't need the budget. They don't have an incentive to do what's efficient. And government also acts without the information that market prices can give you. So there is government failure as well as market failure. And sometimes you just have to do a cost-benefit analysis and find out what's the better thing to do. Okay, well, second to lastly here. Principal agent problem, we've talked about this some already. This is a particular kind of market failure that occurs when an agent makes decisions on behalf of the principal. And we've worked on that some already, so I won't labor it. And lastly, moral hazard. We're going to be studying moral hazard in your homework assignment tonight when we study the healthcare system. The moral hazard is a market failure where you have an incentive to make a bad decision. And I guess I'm giving away things a little bit here, but we're going to be talking about the healthcare insurance market. Can anybody see how, actually I'll let you finish, right? You can concentrate. So health insurance is a good thing to have. Everybody wants health insurance. How can we say that insurance could give you the incentive to make a bad decision? Let me put it another way. The insurance company is willing to pay thousands of dollars of your bills if you get yourself injured. See the point I'm making here? Are you likely to be more careful or less careful if you know that you're covered for injury? Yeah, you're going to be less careful. And so I'm not going to go into it too much now because they're going to hear the podcast. But there's always this trade-off, this moral hazard problem, whereby insurance companies are trying to give you incentives to behave responsibly, but at the same time, the whole idea of their business is paying you to get hurt. Let me tell you a moral hazard problem that was closer to home. When I was a senior in high school and a freshman in college, I worked at Pizza Hut, and you got what they gave you one tiny little pizza. They gave you a small for working that day. And I didn't think that going to a whole shift at work, I thought they should give you more food than that. Of course, I was hungry all the time. But that's all that they gave you. However, if you messed up a pizza order, you got something.
I accidentally do it all the time.
Yeah, so we have one confession up here. Same person who plundered the oceans of fish is also plundering the shop. Pizza? Yeah, I remember distinctly saying, I'm so hungry. And the guy I was working with, I'm so hungry too. And he was making a large piece of food. Oops. Threw it onto into the oven. So, yeah. All the time. Where do you live? Anybody else have some moral hazard problems that you know from life? We've got health insurance, we've got pizza where if you get the benefit, you get the pizza if you mess up your order. I know that I have one more example. Okay, well let me share with me if you come up with any off the top of your head. Moral hazard is similar in some ways to a principal agent problem because one person is making the decision to be reckless and the other person is paying for it. But moral hazard it's usually in terms of risk. Actually, no, there's one other really important one. You all are probably now too young to remember. It's amazing. The Great Recession in 2008. But it was a big economic event of our lifetime, unless you count the coronavirus. But all the banks were starting to go bankrupt. And there was a big argument about moral hazard because the government was saying, in order to stop people from panicking and pulling all their money out of the bank, government will step up and guarantee banks holdings for like any amount of money. If a bank is going to fail, federal government will come in with taxpayer money or borrowed money and bail them out. What's that? Well, but here's the thing. On one hand, if you say that, then maybe you won't have to bail anybody out at all because then everybody will be calm. And all you did was just say a word and everything is okay. Or you say the word and everybody panics anyway, and then you end up paying a ton of money. But then there's also the moral hazard idea that maybe it works, but then maybe people behave less responsibly next time. Maybe the bank says, well, we avoided the crisis this time. We're not going to keep any money on hand for the future. We're just going to be as risky as we possibly can because we know federal government will likely arrest us. And man, this was a big argument back then. People did, some people did not like the idea of government bailing out their neighbor. Other people were like, we're all in this together. Anyway, moral hazard for banks as well. Okay. Where are we? 423. By the way, your homework is going to be, where are we? In addition to the quiz, you're going to listen to another podcast. This one's a bit longer than the other one. I think this one is a full 45 minutes or something like that. So give yourself some time to listen to this. Maybe speed it up to 1.25 times. You're going to answer these 4 questions and those comprehension questions. You're also going to study the quiz. Okay. Pause. It's time to go back to supply and demand. Okay? Any questions about all that stuff? Okay. I'm trying to control this thing over here.